All right, welcome to Voices for Liberation, where we amplify the voices of those fighting for justice, self-determination, and empowerment. Today, we have a very brother, Ramzu Yunus. He is a visionary leader, a bold advocate for human rights, and a champion for Afrodescendant self-determination. From spearheading initiatives like the Republic of Detroit to organizing the human rights policy officers, his work challenges the status quo and inspires communities to reclaim their power. In this conversation, we'll do a deep dive into his mission, the struggles and triumphs along the way, and what true liberation means for our people. This is a conversation about empowerment and the future we together. Brother Ramzu, welcomes for liberation. It's an honor to have you here. Let us start with this. What sparked you on your journey into activism and self-determination?
First of all, thank you for having me, brother, and salute to yourself and to the audience. I hope you all can hear me. You know, I'm in Egypt and my reception is not that good here, but I'm going to do what we can do. What sparked me, man, I call it the Malcolm X story, because I was in prison as a youth. I went to prison at 18 years old, and it was in prison where I discovered myself, basically, and learned about the history of Black people, and because I was questioning why all of us were in there, why were me and my peers and everybody in the prison looked like me, the majority was us. Types of questions, started studying and got into the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and also studied Marcus Garvey, things trying to find myself. So that's what made me conscious and aware of our condition and our need to get out of that condition. And so I just dedicated to study, and I dedicated and made a vow that when I was released from prison that I would engage full time in the struggle for my people.
Yes, sir. That's a blessing. And I know I've seen you around for years, either Detroit or Atlanta. So I'm proud of the things that you're doing. And when the Republic of Detroit, it represents a bold move towards self-determination for Afro-descendants. Can you elaborate on self-determination and the vision and objectives behind this initiative? What challenges have you encountered establishing the Republic, and how have you addressed them?
Yes, well, the move was for Black independence, for Black people in general. Of course, we have to start somewhere. So Detroit, the blackest city in America, that's over 500,000 people, and a city that's in a deplorable condition. And we know the more poor the people are, the more they are ready for revolution. So, but I was in Zimbabwe not immediately, but a few years or several years after I was released from prison at the age of 21, I moved to Africa. You know, I got out of prison and started looking for leadership to follow. But I only was witnessing rhetoric. I didn't see any real action that put matters in our own hands. You know, so I didn't know what to do. I was only 21. So I said, well, what can I do? I was 21, 22, turned 23. And at the age of 22, 23, I saw an article about Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe and the land reclamation program. So I went over there. I said, oh, I'm going there. There's something going on. They're doing something. So I just went to Zimbabwe, and I lived there for quite some time. I basically grew up into my adulthood in Zimbabwe, and actually made it to the level of even working with President Mugabe, his government. And from them, other governments, like I went representing Mugabe's office to Venezuela, met Hugo Chavez, and was meeting different people around the world in leadership, and was talking with them, trying to discover ways of solving our problem globally. You know, not just in Africa, but in Black people in America, of course, because that's what's my main concern anyway. And I kept running into them telling me that we're struggling for the wrong thing in America. Like, you shouldn't be, why y'all trying to include yourself, your leaders, they talk about the main leaders they see on TV, et cetera, and the ones that's popular. It's just a bunch of rhetoric. So I don't know why you following them. You're not going to get anywhere with that. But I learned that the only struggle was for independence. Once you run your own show, why y'all keep begging these people and using rhetoric, talking noise to them instead of running your own show? So eventually, one thing led to another. I decided to come back to America and launch the Black Independence Movement. I called it Nation Time. And I didn't know where to go when I first went to America, but I questioned where should I go, and it just came to me through various channels. It kept coming up to me in my ears from various people for various reasons. Detroit, and said, "Oh yes, Detroit." And being a follower of the teachings of Fard Muhammad, I said, "Well, that's where he declared independence at anyway. It was in Detroit." So I made my way to Detroit. Didn't know anybody in Detroit. I had met John Muhammad. He had passed, and I met his minister at the time, Sami Muhammad, when I did go to Detroit, probably around 2001, 2002, something like that. So, but I didn't know anyone there, really. And so I called Prince Asiel from the Hebrew Israelites, and he connected me with a pastor there, a preacher, Reverend Reveille in Detroit. So I went to Detroit. We launched the movement there, and the movement was for an example to be made out of Detroit, really, for all Black America, to assert the right of self-determination. And I always like to say right of self-determination so that our people won't get it twisted. Some of us have been confused with the Kwanzaa meaning of self-determination, which is an impotent meaning. The Kwanzaa meaning means we're going to be, I'm going to have the name Ramzu. I'm going to give him the name Toby back, but I'm going to have the name Ramzu. But I'm still going to be on the plantation. That's the Kwanzaa meaning of self-determination. Now, the meaning of the right of self-determination, or self-determination in the international legal context, meaning us governing ourselves, us running the plantation. I just naming myself Ramzu on the plantation, wearing the dashiki on the plantation. So first, let's get that straight. Whenever I mention self-determination and you mention self-determination, we're talking about governing ourselves, being independent, going for self. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about just having a Black name and all these type of things. But so that's the movement in Detroit. And how do you get self-determination? How do you assert the right of self-determination, self-government? It's a collective decision made by a people. So how do the people make that collective decision? Through a vote. So I hosted a number of referendums for the people to vote for independence in Detroit. And I let the people know, look, this is what we can get from independence. I didn't just say, let's have a Black nation, have a Black flag, red, black, and green flag, star and crescent flag. People don't care about that. The people are poor. What can the poor benefit from our liberation, from our independence? So I told the people of Detroit, we campaigned, said, look, all these properties in Detroit, since there's a housing epidemic in Detroit and nationwide, we can take over the houses and you can have the houses for free. All of it belongs to us. Just vote for independence. And that's when everything went viral. Actually, we had tens of thousands of people signing up, coming downtown to vote. It attracted the attention of the federal government, so they stepped in and started running the show. But I don't want to get too ahead of what we're talking, of where you're at, the steps we're taking with the questions. But that's what the Detroit Initiative is. It's just us voting for, making an example, really, of independence. What's the procedures for independence? We always talk about Black power. How do you get Black power? Do we get Black power by marching? Do we get Black power by dressing up in certain uniforms and putting our fist in the air saying Black power? How do we actually get Black power? You get Black power through revolution. And revolution doesn't mean all the time violence. It means a change of power, taking of power. How can we legally take power, lawfully take power, even according to the laws of the United States, because they are in agreement. They ratify these international covenants, like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So according to their definition of Black people getting power, and the process it's as simple as us holding a vote, or having at least knowing what the collective will of the people is, and the collective will expresses that they want to be independent, so we can declare independence and take it over. And so that's the process of what we've been going through in Detroit and elsewhere.
Beautiful, brother. I mean, I think I started off with the right question, because I've said it in private conversations, Ramzu is the subject matter expert on self-determination, the true meaning of it. Mm-hmm. I've been on your weekly calls twice before. You've absolutely mastered the topic, and this topic is something that is very important to our people, because specifically learning in that paper that you introduced called The Decline of Self-Determination, which was a complete eye-opener for me, and how the true letter of self-determination has been watered down. As you mentioned in the Kwanzaa definition of self-determination, right? It's not like it's been sloganeered, right? You put on some Nikes, you go shoot some jump shots. That could be self-determination, but that's not what it is, right? And in that paper, that you made me aware of on that call, and everyone that was on that call, it's been watered down because there's a potential conflict that can arise, especially like they were pointing, the examples they used were the European nations that were balkanized in the 90s as a result of self-determination pursuits. Now, why we lead with the Republic of Detroit, because the listener, the audience can see this as something as a taboo topic that could be considered dangerous. But you're saying like, no, this is an actual right that we have, right? That you as a human being, right? There's a declaration that you can adhere to as a human being, that there's nothing wrong with pursuing self-determination. So my question here is this. Can you explain the true intent of self-determination and why we as Afrodescendants in America and around the world, if we do have a claim, and that's what we would like to pursue, there's nothing wrong in doing it, and that this is your legal right as a human being. You're entitled to pursue self-determination. Can you just provide some definition and meaning behind that?
Yes, well, there's a covenant, international covenant, that was drafted by the nations at the United Nations called the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It was drafted and accepted in 1966, but it didn't get the required amount of nations signing on to become powered until 1976. The United States didn't ratify it until 1992. But once the United States ratified it, it means it became supreme law of the United States. Number one thing that International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights states is all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. So that's the real definition of self-determination. Our status was nothing that we determined. We were a captured people. We were enslaved people. Now we were relegated to being minorities inside of somebody else's determination. So internationally, they acknowledge that, look, all peoples have a right of self-determination. So Black people, indigenous people, those who didn't create the government of the United States have a right to determine their own, whether we want to remain with them or be free from them. It's something that we have a right to collectively determine. They have not gotten us together and said, okay, Black people, do you really want to be under us and keep facing this oppression, or do you want to be free? Of course, we choose freedom. But a majority of us don't even know we have a legal right to that was even ratified by the United States. Of course, there's going to be opposition. The United States don't want to lose power. They don't want to lose this group of people called Black people, whatever they want to call us, that's empowering the country, keeping the country running, doing the workhorse of the country. They don't want to lose that, so there's going to be opposition. But if there's nothing else that we can do, we've tried it all. We tried inclusion. Now they're taking away the inclusion. We tried that. It didn't work in the first place, and now they're taking away the little inclusion that they did give us. So now if inclusion doesn't work, integration doesn't work, then what else do we have that can give us justice, put us on a sound economic footing, besides us just standing up and saying, look, we're going to control our areas. We control it. We're going to govern this. So we have no solution besides self-determination, or asserting our right of self-determination. And that definition is just, as I just said, it's a new political status for us. We don't have to go anywhere. Where I live, I'm in Detroit. when I'm back home in America, that's black anyway. So all we have to do is stand up and say, look, this whole city that's worth $600 billion in just in devalued real estate, and it's worth tens of trillions of dollars in geographical value because of the fresh water. We take this and now we got $600 billion in real estate value. We got tens of trillions of dollars in value because of the geographical situation. So now we control this. You want a reparations check, since you think reparations is money, but we can leverage those assets and cut everybody a check if we want to. So we can establish our own situation. But that's what self-determination is. It's simply us saying, look, we're going to control this. We're going to control the assets. We control everything in this city. You can't gentrify us. You can't brutalize us or terrorize us with your police, because now we control the police force. We got rid of that police force. We put our own police force in place. So self-determination is black power. Black power.
Indeed. Beautiful. Now, to give you a modern day example of the self-determination process from beginning to end, dissatisfaction of a people to true self-determination, South Sudan, right? I'm based in Kenya. And I've heard you mention, and I just want you the simplified process in which they went through the plebiscite vote. You can go through that. But certainly in the context of, you say South Sudan is the Republic of Detroit in this context, right? They were part of a larger nation, Sudan, right? They determined we are entitled to this part of our country. I know I'm not really being accurate with the language. We're trying to give a summary for the audience to understand what this concept is and the reality. These are not just a bunch of kooky people, academic people, extremist people. No, this is the letter of the laws as it relates to human rights, that South Sudan at one point was part of Sudan. It became independent. They leveraged the resources for themselves. And as in the example that you brought up of, that they got their reparations. I'm in Kenya. Many Kenyans go to Sudan for work. To South Sudan for work today. South Sudan is doing somewhat well for itself aside from the minor skirmishes among themselves, but as far as the resources, they have compensated themselves very well based on your example, real world example. Another example, and I don't want to take up too much of the conversation, but just, keeping the audience in mind, just trying to provide these examples. You have the Sahel states now, right? They've formed this this union of Sahel states, Mali, Niger, and the biggest one, Burkina Faso, right? When they say they want France out, they're not fearing. They have a right, and is this in the context of self-determination, sir? Right? They say thank you. That was another administration that allowed you to stay. We are a sovereign state unto ourselves. We would like to politely ask you to leave, right? France has to pick up and leave without a fight because as a nation, they have the self-determination to say so. Now, if you're a leader and you fear repercussions, which certainly there will be dirty little tricks in the areas of intelligence, surveillance, and espionage, etc., then you might freeze and allow France to stay, right? But just am I using the context of self-determination accurately? Yes, sir. So, any insight into the South Sudan situation, just to provide context?
I was just in Sudan, and should be going back any week now. The situation in Sudan is one I use often. Matter of fact, I just used it on our weekly call just last week, some days ago, because South Sudan situation represented a good example of self-determination. Very simple. Matter of fact, if you look at their ballot, it was like one hand saying bye-bye, another hand shaking in brotherhood. We want to stay united with our enemy. So you check that shake. You want to check that if you want to stay united with your enemy or your oppressor. Check that. Or you can check the box that says bye-bye, adios, we're leaving you, enemy. That's how simple it was. And that's all we have to do as a people. Do you want to say adios to them, or do you want to stay united under oppression where you don't even get any benefit from the union? So Of course, our people choose the latter, but that's how, or we would choose to be separated. But our people don't know that we have that. We don't know the simplicity of this. And it's a fault of our leadership of making justice complicated. Justice is not complicated. It's complicated when you're trying to get justice inside of a pit of fire. If you are mice inside of a pit of snakes trying to get justice, it's very complicated because by nature, it can't happen. So, but that's the context we're struggling in, trying to get justice amongst a people who never gave justice to our people. And it seems unnatural for them to do so. But those situations, and the same thing was in Sudan in a way. He said, look, y'all are not going to treat us right. The northern Sudanese people in that north, y'all are going to treat us wrong. So we're going to say, bye, we have a right to determine for ourselves, especially if you can prove that you are a separate people. We can prove our historical differences. We can prove our differences of color, as far as us in America and white folks. We can prove that one of them enslaved the other. We can prove that one of them continues to oppress the other. And if that continues to happen, then we got to follow the example of South Sudan and others who simply just held their ballot. Do you want to remain black people oppressed by America? Do you want to keep having Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, George Floyd situations happen on a daily basis? Do you want to keep having wrongful convictions? Do you want to continue to be impoverished forever? Do you want to be able to be included, then unincluded by a decision of the head of the administration? Or do you want to have your own power to rectify your own situation, to give yourselves reparations, to give yourselves justice, to have your own police force? And it's as simple as us collectively saying yes. And then those of us who have organized ourselves to govern and regulate the affairs, we declare, we start running it just like we do after we are voted in as mayor. We just start running it, or whatever position we're voted in as. So that's how simple it is. It's not complicated. It's very simple, very simple.
No, and thank you for providing that context without dwelling on South Sudan. But, America doesn't object that South Sudan made that vote, right, in favor of independence.
They helped organize it.
Right. The UN recognizes, and this is the youngest nation in the world, blah, 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 blah. All the things that they did, they rolled out for South Sudan, right? Put an embassy, right, in Juba. South Sudan, they are recognized as a result of exercising their right to self-determine. Now, Sudan may not have liked it. So in our context, the Sudan, the nation of Sudan, is America, right? They may not have liked it, but they built up enough political capital to be able to exercise the right and have enough leverage. That's a lot of the kind of the muck that would have to be navigated. Now, I would say in our case, South Sudan is a little less subsumed than we are in America, right? So, they were kind of an isolated region of a larger country, being Christian, or animist, as they say, whatever that means. But different lineages. They were just an ostracized part of the country. You would not find them in Dakar or Khartoum, or any other part of Sudan, being teachers, being police officers, they were completely unto themselves. And the makeup, and the reason why I'm going into that is that for them, they had a long time to kind of contemplate their plight versus us. Like there would be a middle study, and the context of African men, they can sit around for hours, right? Whether they be eating cola nuts in West Africa, drinking a beer in East Africa, coffee in Ethiopia. They will discuss their plight for hours on edge, day after day, for decades into centuries, right? Like they are very concerned about the plight of their people. So in this case with the South Sudanese, when it came time to vote, they were crystal clear, right? We're not quite in that situation because it's kind of like, and I mentioned this with Safiwe yesterday, is that what we project to the world, and you being in Africa, me being in Africa, people are not clear on how to take us as Black people from Afro-descendants from America? Right? Are you the one that wants to reconnect, or are you the American one? Right? You like we what we project, right? So we don't even clearly project our desire, right? And so people don't even know, like, so when they meet someone like yourself, they're surprised because there's this element that kind of subsumed in America. They're okay with being American. They don't necessarily. That wasn't the case with the South Sudanese. With that, when it this is bye bye. It was just that easy for them because they were crystal clear and united on that. In my belief. Now, and this is about you, but I love this topic, because of you. I've really seen this in a different light. Human rights policy officers. The human rights policy officers play a crucial role in promoting and protecting human rights. What inspired the creation of the group, and what are its primary functions?
Well, I was inspired by a couple of situations. One situation, the main situation was actually I was at the UN talking to an ambassador and in a meeting on the sidelines of the UN in I think 2015. And like many amongst us in different organizations, we go to Big Brother UN for some assistance, and we talk about the reparations issue, self-determination, etc., justice for Black people, or a stand against the injustice that's being put upon our people in America. And the ambassador, he spoke so clearly and said, "Look, man, we can't assert your right for you. You have the right. We can't come in and give you reparations, make them give you reparations, make you enjoy freedom. You have to assert yourself as a free person, assert your right of self-determination. We can't make you be self-determinant. It's your right that you have to assert. And now if they try to oppose you, which they probably will, and resist that, then you have to do what men do." He said, "So I would advise you to create a force to be able to enforce self-determination if they resist it." And also we needed a force to enlighten, to help educate the people as well. So I immediately left, and that's when I went and developed this logo. You might see, I think you can see on the shirt, developed my logo and everything. The uniform came together and said, okay, with some officers. And an unnamed, I'm not going to name the city official, but a high-ranking official in Detroit area, where I was organizing self-determination at, they met with me and told me that it wasn't them, that the city itself that was against me. They said it was the feds trying to stop it because they saw us mobilizing a lot of people. He said, and the police did try to interrupt us, illegally interrupt us. And this official, who was a lawyer by profession, a doctor of law, he said, "Look, what you're doing is right. It's legal." He said, "What they're doing, they're using might against you." He said, "Son, you don't even have enough guns, son. You should be able to check them. Not saying shoot it out with them, but be able to check them so they can think twice about resisting or being unlawful against or forcibly denying our right of self-determination." So that further gave me a encouragement to promote human rights policy officers, to raise an army of human rights policy officers to be able to stand and say, "Look, you're not going to forcibly deny us. You're not going to beat us up, put us in jail." Like I've been beat up and put in jail with no charges because they couldn't charge me with anything. They just want me to shut up and stop letting the people know they have a right of self-determination. So that's the purpose of human rights policy officers. But number one, we serve the people by educating them, making them aware of their rights. Because most people, if they knew they had that right, they would have, not most people, but a lot of people, enough to make it effective. You might have one fearless person out of 1,000 or out of 10,000. What if we get to the whole 50 million? That's a whole army then, even if you got one out of 1,000. So we have to first that's our job, is to make the public aware. Then we organize them to say, "Look, we're going to assert it. We're going to move into Detroit by the thousands and say, look, we declare independence." We can sweep through our neighborhoods and say, "Look, this is what's going on. Do you vote for independence?" We already really had a vote, so it's already official in Detroit. We just need the capacity. But any city like Detroit, a group of officers coming in, like we done as Black Panthers, like the group under the NFAT group that was there a few years ago, marching all those guns. Let's just march into a city, not to demonstrate, but to self-determinate, so to speak. So now we're going to determine for ourselves, we run this. and it's nothing that they can do to stop us. And if they want to lawfully stop, they're gonna think twice. To hold on, when they see all them men standing up, hold on now. If it's two, they're not gonna question. It's gonna crush us, little 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. They see thousands of us standing. They're gonna say, hold on now, what are they doing in the first place? Oh man, that's right. We have no right to stop them in the first place. You see? So, but that's what's going on in Detroit. I don't know where the question was. I done led into something else, but
No, all of it is relevant, brother. The one thing is, it's about rights, right? So, the example being civil rights movement, and we're coming through all this Trump mess, but it started on King's birthday, Dr. King's birthday, on his inauguration. But just reflecting on that, is that they, from a legal standpoint, had read the Constitution, right to assembly, and it took a force and a movement for them to be recognized. They were met with resistance, right? But they persevered. They proselytized. They brought more people to the movement, and ultimately America said, "You're right, right? You're right to assemble. You're right to protest. You're right," and they had to make changes as a result of that. Now, moving into human rights, it's the same thing. And the one thing that I've heard you bring up before is that, to the degree, and I may be misquoting, and you could clarify that, and this is, I agree with it because I've seen this in the places that I've traveled to, that technically human rights is not being enforced anywhere in the world, right? Everyone is exercising might, right? And this is the might is right concept. So it's like, our people generally don't react because we believe that the right is with the mightier people, right? So whatever they say goes, so we just follow that instead of what is actually right in the area of human rights. So just speak on that a little bit, as far as where the will must lie for our people if they really want this long term.
I mean, it's a conference that what's it called? A conference on African Americans and the right of self-determination that was held at Hamlin University Law School early 1993, because the United States government, a few months prior in 1992, they ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So these doctors of law said, oh, they ratified it. The black doctors of law said, look, the first thing in that covenant is the right to self-determination. So let's get together and discuss this and offer consultation to black leadership. Because during that conference, those lawyers or those doctors of law pointed out that, look, black people are stuck in what they called at the conference an enslavement paradigm. We stuck thinking we have to handle things under the might of the white power structure in America. But according to human rights, we don't have to bow down and succumb and be submissive to that might. According to human rights, matter of fact, human rights encourages revolution against that might, because that might is a violation of human rights. It was established upon a violation of human rights. It maintains itself upon violations of human rights. So we don't have to submit to it in the international context. Now, if we try to follow the civil rights or the laws that were written by the violator, then we're always going to be entrapped. It's in this, they call it enslavement paradigm. Civil rights versus human rights. Now, when we realize we have human rights to not even have to accept the dictates of those civil laws that were written by an oppressor and illegal occupier, then now we're getting somewhere. And that law says, look, you don't have to accept the might of the domination of the people that dominated you. You can actually resist that might without permission from them. You can resist them and establish your own power. Now, of course, there's going to be opposition to it. So some of us will willingly remain in that enslavement paradigm. And that's our leadership who know better, but they don't want no smoke. You think Jesse Jackson want to be like Dr. King? He afraid of a bullet, especially when you can put money in your pocket. You think the other ones that were with Dr. King are willing to take a bullet? No, that's why they joined the same government that killed Dr. King. They weren't willing to sacrifice like Dr. King. In the same way with those others of other groups that Malcolm X helped lead, they don't want no smoke with the government. But they know what me and you are talking about. And they have the ability to mobilize the people like Dr. King had the ability to mobilize the people to assert that right. But nobody wants smoke. So there's ignorance that's keeping us in this enslavement paradigm of accepting the mic and trying to handle everything within civil rights. But we can keep on trying to vote. We keep on trying to march, keep on trying to protest. Now, some people don't know that there's something we can do besides that. But there are those, especially the main leaders of Black America, that know that there is something that we can do. They just refuse to do it because they don't want to face that resistance, especially when they themselves, as a leader, they're living pretty good, you see.
Right.
But we have to do something. That's what we have to promote to our people on a massive level, that, look, get suited and booted. We need you to stand up. You don't have to use a gun. You don't have to come with a gun if you want to. We want the masses of our people standing and say, look, we are asserting ourselves. And we have to be bold enough, like those white founding fathers and their citizens they represented. They said, give me liberty or give me what? Death. Yes. Mm-hmm. We want to say, give me liberty, but I'm afraid of death. That's our slogan overall as a Black leadership. Give me liberty, but I don't want to die. I'm afraid to die. How are you going to get somewhere like that? You have to be willing to risk your freedom and risk your life. Right. Your freedom might not be taken. Your life might not be taken, but it's something that we have to risk, or otherwise we'll see it being snuffed out slowly but surely. Right. But thanks to our number one recruiter that's on the scene today by the name of President Donald Trump, because he's going to kick our butts and put us up against the wall where we have to self-determine. They're going to have to follow Brother Shahid Ali. They're going to have to follow you. They're going to have to accept the Afrodescendant nation. They're going to have to go along with the Afrodescendant Union and our initiative and all the other initiatives for self-determination, that one initiative for us to be independent. So they're going to be forced into it anyway. And so we're going to be there to provide them with the guidance. This is how you do it. If you're in this city, get your people together, hold the vote, or y'all want to be independent, who's going to represent this community? Oh, y'all 5 or 6, 7, 8, y'all can represent because y'all the new governing council. You get some strong men amongst y'all. All these little boys got guns anyway. Deputize them. Y'all can protect this self-determination. All right, we run this. We dare you to come in here, police. Come in here again, you want to. Yeah. Come in here, you want to. So that's self-determination. It's not difficult, but now we're forced to it. So thank you for even having a platform and help spread that word to our people, because if the masses knew, then they would do. You think when we tore up, I was there in Baltimore. We burnt up, tore up Baltimore when they killed Freddie Gray. You think if we knew as a collective that we could take over the city, we would have burnt it up? No, we'd have took it over. You think we would have burnt up Ferguson when they didn't indict those police and lock them up for killing Michael Brown? No, we didn't know we had a right of self-determination. So we had thousands out there, tens of thousands of us, but instead of taking over and asserting our right of self-determination, we burnt the place up. Right. Because there was not a massive awareness. So now we have to make people massively aware. Look, Black people, look, you who are watching this podcast or this broadcast, you have a right of self-determination. So your framework must be based on that. No more struggling for civil rights. No more mobilizing people to march, to vote 4 years after 4 years after 4 years after 4 years. No, right now, within even 4 days, organize your community and take it over based on your right of self-determination. Absolutely. I mean, it's to the audience, this is not what you think, as far as this is not a rah-rah rally, go out there with guns type of the perception that's been fed to you, right? It's just simply saying no, right? No, we will not go with the flow anymore, right? You know, it's kind of like a battered wife who continuously over years acquiesced to the abusive husband, and one day she just said no. Right, and the other times when she was saying yes, she thought she was going to get killed. But one time she found out, she said no, she didn't die, and she grew stronger from that to the point where she was able to lead. I know it's a basic example, but it's example, brother. Yes, sir. It's just say no. Right? Resist in that way. The subtle resistance. So you don't have to go all out. Don't let your fear allow you to just jump out the window. No, that's not what we're saying. It's a very high level and a simple process of just saying, if you do it. Brother Ali, all you have to do, look, you don't have to be crazy like and radical like Ramzu. Or like Brother Ali or the brothers. No, I'm not saying that. We're just saying vote. Just say, look, I want to be independent as a Black people. We have to have a collective will that wants this. Now, then those of us who may be bold enough to stand up, now we'll stand up and say, look, we're enforcing this based on the will of the people, like they did in many, like the founding fathers of America. They didn't even have a vote. They said the people already voted us to be their representatives, so we declare independence. And by the way, they declared independence against the strongest empire in history at that time, the British Empire. They were 13 little colonies, 13 little bitty colonies in America. It wasn't even the whole United States. It was 13 colonies. They were bold enough to stand against the British Empire and declare their independence.
Right.
So that's what we have to do. It don't have to result. If enough of us stand up, believe me, it's not going to be a war. And matter of fact, even during the civil rights struggle, during the masses, they might have killed one or two of the leaders. They didn't shoot everybody down that was out there marching and stuff. Right. They were trying to silence just the leaders. So you all don't have to worry. We just need you to express it. It is your will to be independent and have justice by way of voting. And look, yeah, I want independence. So now, brothers like myself, Brother Ali, now we represent 50 million black people that say, look, we vote for independence. We have that willpower behind us. So even if we have to go solo, dolo, as they say, I said, okay, I'm a one-man army. I'm Rambo representing my people. And I'm going to assert this right of self-determination. And if they forcibly deny it, then I might have to literally turn into a Rambo. Right. We don't want that situation if the masses of us just simply stand up.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I know time is getting short. You got to run out real quick. But, I do want to say, yeah, we definitely have to take that stand. And I think some of the work that you've done in Detroit must have rubbed off on a few people, because I see a lot of groups of black men who are actually patrolling the streets of Detroit. There's like a movement. I can't remember. It's on Instagram. I'll send you the link. And there are groups of black men I've been seeing for like a decade. It started with 100 black men in Detroit. So I think some of what you're saying is rubbing off there, or maybe just the spirit is in Detroit for that. But it feels like self-determination there. So with that said, you're in Egypt. We should announce that on the top of the show, because it is TransAtlantic, and we know we have a bunch of Egypt enthusiasts. Just tell us about the work that's going on there, brother. And we got to bring you back.
Yeah, it's Kingdom of Kush movement here. We're amongst the Nubians here in Egypt, and southern Egypt, and in Sudan as well. We have some area that's sovereign that we're building upon. Also within Egypt, we have some farmland that we're building an agri-village upon, and inviting Afrodescendants to repatriate and come back to Africa and help us do an agri-village that's collective farming. We make money together, we farm together, and we live together, and we develop an economy, a society together. And ultimately, there's land also in the same area that's sovereign, that's over 650,000 acres that we can go into and put our own flag up. It's the Kingdom of Kush. So that's the project that we are working on right here in Egypt or Sudan, southern Sudan, the ancient Kush area. So that's what we're working on here. People are welcome to get involved. But in America, which is still my priority, I'll be back in America, in Detroit, on the ground, asserting our right of self-determination, bringing that to a conclusion in some months from now. But that's what we're doing in Egypt, brother.
Brother, I'm gonna ask you in front of the audience, will you please come back? Because I would love to get into that, and then the Afrodescendant Union, which we weren't able to get to here. But I know time is money, and I know you are a very busy man. But if we could get you to come back, I believe this will be beneficial for everyone.
Yes, sir. Definitely will come back. I appreciate you, brother. You're doing a great work. I applaud you, brother. I applaud you. So salute to yourself for the work that you're doing and inviting me, giving me a platform to share this information for us, for our people.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Tell people, links to the site, and I'll make sure it's in the description for everyone if they're interested in learning more about the Kingdom of Kush and human rights policy officers and the Afro-Descendant Union. But we will bring you back to talk about it. But plug anything you have to plug right now, brother.
Okay. I want every person watching this to go to humanrightspolicy.us. I want you to register and answer your responsibility to be a human rights advocate and protector of your people. On that website, you can also register and take a class and get a certification, a human rights certification as well, through a 5-hour course that you can divide it up for a week, whatever, and finish the course. But we need you. It's your responsibility, even according to international law. They have a declaration on the right and responsibility of individuals, groups, and organs of society to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms. So even at the United Nations level, they say the ultimate responsibility is yours, brothers and sisters. It's your responsibility. So stand up with us. Help us to assert this right of self-determination. Help protect our people from the tyranny of the government, and definitely the bold, outright tyranny of Donald Trump. And the only way that you can do that and guarantee yourself justice and reparations is to stand up and those human rights. So stand up with human rights policy officers. We're looking for 5,000 brothers and sisters to stand, to go to Detroit, and from Detroit, places like Jackson, Mississippi, and throughout the United States. We're going to have self-determination this year. We're going to protect ourselves and end the oppression this year, but it's up to you, brothers and sisters. So humanrightspolicy.us, you go to the Afrodescendants.com, and you'll see a vote there where you can also vote, get your Declaration of Independence card as well. We're on a high level, bringing the groups together. We're not forming a new Afro-descendant nation or anything, but we're bringing all the groups together to have a collective assertion of the right of self-determination and work together, just like the African Union, as the Organization of African Unity, work together to make sure that those different lands were liberated. So we're doing the same amongst our people. So we need your participation, not just participation watching this podcast. We need some elbow grease, brothers and sisters. Let's put in some work. Love you all.
All right, peace and blood, beloved, and we look forward to the next time, and I'll work with you behind the scenes on that. But truly appreciate it, and I'll put all the links in the description, family. Peace and blessings.